Welcome to Condo Connections. Today we have a very special guest, a great friend of myself, Steve Jones. How you doing, Steve?
Good, thank you, Jason.
Welcome to Condo Connections, Steve. You're one of our very first guests on Condo Connections. How does that feel?
Privilege, privilege, and
Okay.
a little bit of skepticism, but let's do it.
Well, Steve, I got to tell you this, in case you didn't know, the reason we built Condo Connections is there's so many awful experiences that happen out there. There's really no trusted source. There's really no one out there right now who can people can listen to and talk about these really serious issues in strata. So, who better than a guy who lives in strata, who has had some challenges recently, to share with our listeners what it's like. So, Steve, we want to thank you from the bottom of our hearts because you're really doing a big thing here in helping out other owners. Because, as you know, you had experience happen in your condo a little while ago.
Well, it's still happening. It hasn't completed. I guess the damage is done, and we're in this holding pattern, waiting for the next step. And that's the uncertainty is just a bit nerve-wracking, just not knowing when something's going to happen and what's going to happen and when it's going to happen.
Got it, Steve. Okay, so for the listeners out there who don't know, my good friend Steve here had a water leak in his condo. How long ago?
I think we're at least 3 and a bit weeks ago.
3 and a bit
Sort of
weeks.
yeah, that's right. So 1 a.m. Thursday morning, we woke up to fire alarms going off, and we thought it was just our little townhouse. Little did we know that it was every other suite in the building, and I think we've got, I should know what this is. We've got at least 50 townhomes in 4 different buildings in the same complex, if that makes any sense. But anyways, a sprinkler pipe break in a townhouse, basically next door to us and above them, so over one and up one. Their pipe at 1 a.m. in the morning ruptured, and sure enough, that water found its way down and across into our suite. And that was 3 weeks ago. We had the fire brigade there. We had like Circle Services. They were kind of like one of the restoration company that sort of turned up pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Started vacuuming water. But yeah, that's it in a nutshell. 3 weeks ago, but we're sort of at the moment down to studs. All the flooring's ripped up. A lot of the drywall, a foot off the ground, has all been taken up. The insulation that got wet, that's been taken up. So they've dried the building out, but we're kind of in this state of uncertainty of what's. Well, we know what needs to happen next, which is the floor needs to go back down. But it's all these conversations between the insurance companies, which would be insurance companies. So we had upgrades and things that are non-standard items. So we are insured for those. My advice to anyone listening is to take the extra insurance and pay. If you have got upgrades to your suite, you should pay another couple of bucks a month to have those insured, because some people forget to do that, and then the insurance will basically put you back. They'll replace it back to original condition. So if you sort of paid extra to have your hardwood floors in, they might not be covered. So renew, or you can obviously phone now and upgrade your insurance.
Absolutely, absolutely, Steve. That's great advice. Now take us back to that moment again when you woke up at 1 o'clock. You said Friday morning, right? It was a Friday, so Thursday night, Friday morning.
I can't remember now. I thought it was Thursday morning. Yeah, 1 a.m. Thursday morning.
Pretty early, right? You're in the middle of sleep.
Yeah,
You wake
yeah.
up, you hear this fire alarm. What was the first thing you did? You jumped out of bed. Take us on a trip from there. What happened?
Yeah, I mean, I fire, which kind of got me thinking that it was a false alarm. And that, obviously we thought if there is a smoke or fire, we would have got the hell out of there. We have a young one that was sleeping, so we decided to, I started instinctively, I took the smoke detectors out of their cradles, I guess, out of their fixtures in the ceiling, thinking that would stop. And it stopped the smoke. Actually, it wasn't the smoke detectors. I ended up finding out that it was the fire alarm that he. And I could not physically turn that off. There's no reset button for that, right? The fire brigade somehow reset it. So this thing is just howling. It's ear piercing. It's crazy. So I was covering it up just so I could think clearly while my wife and I kind of decided what we should do next. But that's when we heard the fire brigade. So obviously that sprinkler system breaking, I guess, triggered to the fire brigade that something was going on.
Yes. So for the listeners' benefit here, you'll get a low. What'll happen with a sprinkler pipe is it's based on pressure. So coming out, it'll send back to your main panel in your complex. It'll give it a signal saying low pressure sprinkler. Right, which means that water has been released. It could be from a head, it could be from a pipe. So that, and then it
Well, that's a good point.
Yeah.
That's a good point. We didn't know if the sprinklers were going off and then we found out it was a pipe that had broken, but we could hear the water starting to trickle, and I'm like, I think the neighbor's sprinklers have gone off.
Got it.
This is when everyone gets really freaked out, and I could hear water trickling down the neighbor's side, and then sure enough, come through the light fixtures, starts to sort of creep down the wall and into the ceiling, and the floor basically started to flood the floor. We had 2 inches of water down on the lower floor.
Now, Steve, I want to take a moment for our listeners to just be in that moment with you there. What did you do, and who did you call? I mean, I assume the fire department was there, but did you try and call somebody? Did you know who to call, what to do in that situation?
Well, no, not really. Not really. There's kind of a state of panic that sets in, right? Because stop. That's your primary, like if there's no fire and the sprinklers aren't putting out a fire, you're like, well, this water's unnecessary. Or try and turn the valve off to stop the water coming out of that ruptured
and
pipe.
Did you
so
know?
The fire brigade.
Did you know where that shutoff was? Did you know how to shut off?
Well, no. The fire brigade found that eventually. It took them an hour to find it. And it was a real sort of state of confusion with people trying to find keys and people trying to find the right room that had, the keys for the right room that had the right valve.
Yeah.
Now, there was a fire brigade and then a lot of people on strata and even non-strata people, just tenants. Yeah.
Now, Steve, doesn't that say a lot to the value of having 1, 2, or a team of people in your strata who A, know the building inside and out, B, are on site and have keys to access it, and C, are prepared for these kind of emergencies? Just imagine the difference in damage of a pipe burst for an hour versus a pipe burst for 15 minutes.
Well, yeah. I mean, quick response is paramount, right?
Yeah.
So now we know where the valve is. We didn't know where it was prior to that.
There you go.
But and even the fire brigade guys, they did their best, but they can't know where every valve is in every building. Yeah, the strata. You're right. The strata needs to know, and those people on that strata, or even proper signage needs to be labeled very clearly. Shut off valve, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So anyway, I mean, really long story, and then obviously once a sprinkler emergency watch for a good couple of days, because technically we did not have sprinklers turned on anymore. So you could have a kitchen fire, and sure enough, the whole block would go up because there were no sprinklers to be activated because they were turned off. So,
something a lot of people don't think about.
It really creates a lot of anxiety and confusion from then on. And here we are 3 weeks later, and we're still, the sprinklers are turned back on and everything else, but we're living in temporary accommodation, kilometers from our friends and where we normally reside. I guess the following day became a bit of a confusing mess of calls to make and people to talk to, but surely, the adjusters from both Estrada's insurance company and then our insurance company, BCAA, they were all over it. So, you just start phoning people until you start getting answers, particularly 1 a.m. At 9 o'clock, that morning until, people would start to get to work a little bit, but left a few messages when we could, but yeah.
And so now over the last 3 weeks, they've taken up the floor. They've got their dehumidifiers and their fans in there. And I understand,
Yep.
Steve, you're living in another place right now while the work's being done.
Well, we are, and this is all fully paid for through our insurance company, who also paid to have our furniture, our clothes, whatever, taken out of our place, and they're in storage for now. They've relocated us into a furnished suite. And they gave us a choice of a few places, and we chose one next to a park for our young child, so that's quite convenient. But so what I'm trying to say is our insurance company, BCAA, covered our accommodation costs, which you wouldn't be covered for if you didn't have personal insurance for your personal, for the moving and storage, and then the relocation of our furniture once we're back in our original house. So without that, you'd have to find your own accommodation, move your own stuff out. Sorry, and they also packed everything up, and they spent days packing stuff up, boxing it, moving it off. So our $64 a month times 12, they did put us in a hotel for a few nights. So, definitely well worth the $64 a month.
Yeah, so that works out to, 64 times 12. We'll do for the whole year, and that covered all the restoration, all the emergency restoration. That covered accommodation while the work gets done, and putting everything back together.
That will also include the upgrades. That includes our upgrades, right? Because we did work to the suite, and we told them that we did work to the suite. If we did work to the suite and we didn't tell them about it, they wouldn't have known about it, and they wouldn't have replaced it further down the line.
So did you take pictures of all your upgrades? How could you prove to them that you indeed had the upgrades?
Really, you just paying the extra is sufficient for them. I think there's different categories of upgrades.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, we have pictures that we had taken, but that was more coincidentally rather than intentional for that. But yeah, that's a good point. Take photos of your upgrades and just sort of put them in a file.
Steve, thank you so much for your time today. I want to just
you're welcome.
Thank you again, and also wondering if you'd like to give a shout out to some of the companies. You have mentioned a few names, but would like to give you an opportunity now to just do a quick shout out to the companies who have helped you along here, that you've been happy with their service.
Yeah, so Circle Services, they were the first on site. I guess they're a restoration company. I never really knew what those guys did.
Circle Services, yeah.
Yep.
And anyone, our listeners could have a problem?
Well, our project manager is Duncan. I don't know if you can call him directly, but he was the guy that was assigned to our file. He's been a pretty standout guy.
Great.
At Circle, but here's the other company that jumped in, the BCAA are covering. So it's Service Master. So Service Master were the people that packed up our house. They're storing our contents. They're the people that you get when you have your own insurance, right? So the people next door don't have Service Master, which is they're kind of the people we go to with all these other questions, and they're sort of handling our case more on a personal level than on the strata level. Yep.
Okay, great. So BCAA and Service Master.
There you go. Yeah, that's it.
Awesome, Steve. Thanks again for your time, buddy, and all the best through this time. And we really appreciate you taking the time with us today at Condo Connections.
Thanks, Jay. Yeah, no worries. Anytime. We'll let you know how it goes in the next couple months here.
Sounds great. We'll talk to you later.
See ya.